Hello ladies and gentlemen, happy Halloween and welcome back to the Movie Blues. I am your host DS Lyons, and today on the channel we're going to be breaking down 25 sci-fi horror hidden gems. A couple notes about this list before we get started. It has been culled together from a much larger list of 100 hidden gems that I have up my sleeve. So if you like this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and you may get 25 more sooner than you realize. In terms of how I picked these movies, I wanted them all to be kind of less popular than something like Event Horizon. So don't freak out, Event Horizon is not on this list, that's why I'm talking about it now. That's the golden standard. These are all movies that either need more love, aren't talked about enough, or simply you've never seen before. So without further delay, let's cap the Halloween season off right with this list of 25 sci-fi horror hidden gems.
Oxygen.
No, best one.
From the director of High Tension and The Hills Have Eyes, Oxygen is an insanely tense sci-fi horror movie that follows a woman who wakes up in a futuristic cryogenic freezing chamber with no clue of how or why she got there. The ticking clock begins when she realizes that her medpod is running out of, you guessed it, oxygen, which results in a nail-biting fight for survival with some incredible late-game reveals. This movie just keeps getting better and better as it reaches its crescendo, with director Alexander Aja taking full advantage of the one-actor show, set in a medpod the size of a coffin for its entire runtime. This movie will have you sweating, shocked, and, you guessed it, gasping for air. Check out Oxygen now.
Black Mountain Side.
Someone was sneaking around the outpost last night.
I don't know, maybe it was an animal.
For Christ's sake, that was no animal.
Black Mountain Side is an isolating, chill-inducing sci-fi horror film that uses hypnotizing cinematography and a frozen remote setting to create an uneasy story of cosmic and supernatural dread. The film follows a team of archaeologists who find a strange buried object in northern Canada that appears to be thousands of years old. The team members become isolated when their communications fail and their sanity begins to unravel. And yeah, okay, maybe this looks like The Thing, but is that such a crime? From The Terror, to Helix, to 30 Days of Night, to even Alien vs. Predator, it's time we talked about the Arctic horror subgenre. It rules, and this movie deserves to be in conversation with the greats of that icy subgenre. Regardless of its very apparent influences, Black Mountain Side is an excellent little sci-fi horror film that I never hesitate to recommend.
Hungerford and the Darkest Dawn.
So this is Hungerford.
This is a great duology of found footage horror films from the UK that will happily please fans of movies like Cloverfield or War of the Worlds. The first film, Hungerford, plays like a traditional found footage horror flick that begins with a group of hard-partying teens who just so happen to be at the epicenter of an alien invasion. With tons of great set pieces and some brutal horror mixed in throughout, Hungerford is a high-octane chronicle of an alien invasion that borrows from Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Cloverfield, as the town is overwhelmed by mind-controlling alien bugs. Things devolve into a military campaign against the aliens by the end of the film, a plotline which is then picked up by the movie's sequel, The Darkest Dawn, which is like a mix between the first film and the bleak apocalyptic vibe of movies like Children of Men or shows like The Walking Dead. Featuring some returning characters and plenty of mentions of the first film, this is a fun duology of found footage sci-fi action alien invasion films that few people have seen and even fewer seem to talk about. While it's next to impossible to find these movies in the United States, maybe those in the UK will have an easier time finding these rare and awesome sci-fi horror hidden gems.
What is that?
Geo, Fish Attack.
an anime adaptation of the famous manga from master of horror Junji Ito. Gyo Fish Attack may seem like the Japanese version of Sharknado, but beneath the whole fish walking on land concept, this movie and its accompanying manga is actually a horrific body horror invasion story. This is a sickening, unsettling story of the invasion of Okinawa by millions of fish who have taken to land, seemingly walking on razor-sharp biomechanical legs. The invasion brings with it a mysterious stench of death, which leads to the spreading of a virulent gaseous bacteria that turns men into monsters and fish into murderous walking automatons. With his novels Uzumaki, Tomi, and many more, Junji Ito has basically become the Stephen King of Japanese manga, unfurling unique nightmares on his audience for decades that range from bleak and unforgettable to downright deranged. Fish Attack is no different, with its anime full-length movie adaptation thankfully sticking quite close to the book's most wild and revolting revelations. For one of the weirdest and most twisted sci-fi invasion movies ever, Gyo Fish Attack is an absolute gas.
Dark Side of the Moon. The day of reckoning is upon you all.
There is something undeniably cozy about this little moon rock of schlock from 1990. Sure, this is a direct-to-VHS movie with no-name actors and some wonky effects, but Dark Side of the Moon still manages to tell a pretty creative sci-fi horror space story despite its budget. Now, I've never heard Paul W.S. Anderson talk about this movie, but it has to be an inspiration for his film Event Horizon. So if you wanted like a DTV, Tubi version of that film, then this is the movie for you. When a maintenance vehicle orbiting Earth encounters a spaceship that has been deemed long forgotten nearly 30 years ago, a malevolent force is unleashed that stalks the crew one by one. The lore and reveal of the antagonist here is batshit insane, and is surely worth the price of admission, along with this guy's diabolical mullet as well. For a great 90s throwback in a movie that feels like the Canadian grandfather of Event Horizon, check out Dark Side of the Moon. Not Pink Floyd related.
The Objective.
From the co-director of the Blair Witch Project, The Objective is one of the weirdest and most underseen sci-fi horror films out there. I've never heard another human being discuss this movie, which is a shame because it's incredibly unique and wholly bizarre. The narrative follows a CIA agent who leads a US Special Forces team into the mountains of Afghanistan under the pretense of locating a missing Afghan cleric. As the mission progresses, the team encounters a series of inexplicable and supernatural events. And I do mean inexplicable because the lore and the antagonist of this movie is downright strange and unforgettable. This movie has a low-budget feel in its production, and especially in its acting, but if you're looking for a war movie with a crazy sci-fi twist, then you should consider investigating this brazenly weird movie for yourself. For whatever reason, I've never been able to shake this one. I think about its truly bizarre bad guys rather often, because you'll simply never see something like this elsewhere. A downright weird but strangely rewarding sci-fi horror film that doubles as a solid Afghanistan-era war movie as well. Now it's your turn to seek out The Objective.
Splinter.
Let's get back! Let's Run!
The Thing at a gas station. Yep, that's it. I mean, that's the elevator pitch. If you need to know more, this is Shea Whigham's first major movie role and a fantastically gory sci-fi horror gem with a uniquely designed creature at the center of the mayhem. The plot of the movie, even outside of the parasitic creature horror, is surprisingly tense here, with Whigham holding a couple hostage after a crime spree gone wrong. And they all end up stopping at the wrong gas station at the wrong time. Brutal, lean, and full of excellent homebrewed practical effects, Splinter is a cult classic sci-fi horror gem with an unforgettable antagonist and a host of savage set pieces. A great little character study is buried underneath torrents of sci-fi gore here, in one of the most simple but effective horror films on this list. Check out Splinter now.
No one will save you.
So a lot of people absolutely hate this movie, and I guess I can sympathize with them in some respects because No One Will Save You is at best experimental. But for many mainstream viewers, it can be quite frustrating, mostly due to the fact that this film has absolutely zero dialogue. No One Will Save You is a sci-fi horror mood piece that follows a grisly and inescapable alien invasion on a small town. With a great central performance by Last of Us star Caitlin Dever, No One Will Save You is a wordless nightmare that showcases some truly excellent alien and UFO designs, with some heavily ratcheted tension and effective scares. It won't be for everyone, but for those who want to see an alien invasion film unlike anything that we typically see in a mainstream movie these days, then you'll want to check out No One Will Save You.
Apollo 18.
God damn it, we need to get moving. I'm not leaving here. You can't help me, but you can save yourself.
One of the last attempts to release a found footage horror film on the big screen, Apollo 18 sadly got bombed with middling reviews and sank like a stone at the box office. But don't let that deter you. This is one of the most accurate, insanely detailed found footage movies ever, consisting of quote-unquote real footage captured from a doomed mission to the moon in the 1960s, that the government quickly hid from the public after things went horrifically awry. I remember seeing this in theaters, and it offered up one of the most immersive theater-going horror sci-fi experiences ever. Like, you'll really feel trapped with these astronauts in this capsule, and it's a lot. Some people may find the last third of this movie to be potentially laughable, but I actually loved what they brought to the table here and found this movie absolutely intriguing at the time. It still holds up as a terrific sci-fi horror experiment, attempting to place you in the boots of an astronaut on a mission that goes to some terrifying places. I love found footage period pieces and sci-fi horror, so Apollo 18 was always going to be an easy win for me. But for those who haven't seen it, this is one of the most underrated sci-fi horror space expeditions ever put to screen. And it will make you long for a time when found footage was often released in theaters as a real event. Board Apollo 18 now.
Underwater.
While this movie didn't really make waves upon its release, it's one of the few big-budget sci-fi horror movies to harken back to the golden age of this genre in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, when all it took was a creepy underwater setting and some ghoulish sea monsters to make for a rollicking genre picture worth your time. Shades of Alien, Deep Rising, and Sphere are all mixing around in the tense aquatic brew that is underwater. And with a strong central performance from hot half-lesbian Twilight girl, you've got a recipe for a great little horror movie with some crazy reveals. Like, the one at the end of this movie had me absolutely gobsmacked, and fans of H.P. Lovecraft and aquatic horror will be eaten good with this new genre classic. Great creature designs, strong cinematography, and a bevy of terrifying moments make Underwater one of the best recent additions to the sci-fi horror subgenre. Oh, and fucking TJ Miller is in it. I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do about that, but it's gotta be said regardless.
Worst idea ever.
Anyway, enjoy.
The Signal.
I almost never hear this movie mentioned in conversation about the best of this genre, and that's a damn shame, because The Signal is an unexpectedly twisty and original sci-fi horror story that's full of fascinating ideas and arresting visuals. What starts as a pretty simple teen drama spirals into a Matrix-level mindfuck full of hard-hitting action, crazy special effects, and some utterly unexpected final twists. Lawrence Fishburne is suitably creepy here, and this movie takes pieces of Westworld and The Terminator and The Matrix, as well as a host of other sci-fi classics to create a story that stands on its own and honestly deserved a sequel. Or at least some more fanfare instead of disappearing out of the cultural lexicon instantly. Regardless, this is a really cool, pretty big budget original sci-fi movie, the likes of which we hardly ever see in theaters anymore. Now get out there and show The Signal some love, because barely anybody else seems to be out here doing it besides me.
Pandorum.
Ever wondered what Event Horizon would be like if it were mixed with The Descent and a Marilyn Manson video? I know, that's real specific, but if you're still on board, then you need to check out one of the best sci-fi horror cult classics out there. Ben Foster and Dennis Quaid make up the core of the fantastic cast here, as two crew members of a spaceship wake up from hypersleep to discover that all of their colleagues are missing. Where their fellow space travelers went and where their ship ended up is a mystery absolutely worth exploring. And if you're able to swallow a bunch of choppy MTV-style editing and a few moments of questionable VFX, then you'll be privy to one of the most nightmarish hidden gem sci-fi horror movies out there. A cult classic in the making and one of the craziest and goriest forays into the genre that we've seen since Event Horizon, you need to check out Pandorum now.
The Vast of Night.
While this surely isn't outright horror, The Vast of Night perfectly captures the ethereal, nightmarish qualities of the UFO phenomena that have been reported in the United States for the better part of 100 years. There is something unknowably ominous about our alleged visitors from the sky, and this film has a beautiful way of portraying this mystery that will leave you eerily unsettled. Following two high school students in New Mexico during the late 1950s, The Vast of Night is a gripping period piece that has shades of Amblin-era Spielberg and a bit of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio play in its DNA. This is a gracefully shot and tastefully made movie that could pass as a solid Twilight Zone episode, with a satisfying ending that doesn't devolve into exploitative drivel. Also, there are some tracking shots in this movie that are just breathtaking. For a film that portrays the existential dread and morbid curiosity that we all feel when it comes to the topic of UFOs, The Vast of Night is a near-perfect slice of science fiction.
Ash.
If you've ever wondered what Event Horizon would be like if the screenwriter ate a fistful of magic mushrooms before writing it, then boy, do I have a movie for you. Directed and scored by Flying Lotus, Ash is a psychedelic, almost music video level brain trip that follows an astronaut who awakens aboard a station on a strange planet with all of her crew killed. Classic setup, sure, but this movie does go to some pretty wild places that reminded me of the more mysterious elements of the Alien franchise, and, of course, of the horror sci-fi brutality of Event Horizon once again. This movie wears its influences clearly on its sleeve, but I adore all of those influences, so this was another easy win for me. Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad actually turns in a solid and non-distracting performance here, and overall this is just such a uniquely filmed and neon-drenched sci-fi horror story with some killer reveals and eye-bursting visuals. An absolute critical addition to this fantastic subgenre, Ash is a nerve-shredding cocktail of classic sci-fi horror cliches, punctuated by crazy hallucinatory images from start to finish. Trip out to Ash now.
ANIARA.
ANIARA isn't a conventional horror movie, so if you're looking for yet another film about a slimy alien eating a crew of idiot astronauts, then you'll need to head to some other selections on this list. The brand of terror seen in ANIARA is the kind that I've really grown to appreciate as I've gotten older, that of bleak hopelessness and existential dread. Sometimes the loss of our humanity, as well as the horror of isolation and acceptance of our own doom, is a fear more palpable than any star beast could muster. And ANIARA has this kind of dread in spades. Following a massive transport ship carrying hundreds of families in the future on its way to Mars, the horror of this film really begins when the ship is knocked off course by a rash of incoming space debris. From there, the thousands of crew members and civilians on the ship begin to deal with the realization of their transport being catastrophically lost, which is now drifting without fuel into the endless void of space. As you can imagine, things go from bad to worse as we watch what was basically a luxury liner like a cruise ship endlessly fall into the dark infinity of space. Dwindling hope leads to the rise of cults, deaths, and unimaginable loss as ANIARA shows us the depths of our humanity, or the lack thereof, across an ever-increasing time spent drifting through space. This is a film that feels inescapably relevant the closer our civilization gets to the stars, and is a terrifying simulation of how far we can fall as human beings the further we are from rescue. A meditative, gorgeously shot, but ultimately bleak experience that is as horrifying as it is hopeless.
Coherence.
This is really
Wait,
bad.
what's the box?
Oh my god.
Baby, what did you see?
Hugh, what did you
What
see?
did you see?
This movie is a low-budget, one-location film that shirks its restraints to serve up disorienting brilliance and a real sci-fi head-scratcher that you'll never forget. Strange things begin to happen when a group of friends gather for a dinner party on an evening when a comet is passing overhead. Mind-bending mental and physical effects ensue, and this film manages to pull off some huge ideas, with little to no special effects, and a mostly stage-like presentation with a few actors stuck in a single house. One of those miraculous, eerie, and unnerving sci-fi experiences that utilize dialogue and mood to unleash something wholly original. There's very few movies quite like Coherence, and while it's simply presented, it's full of incredibly cool sci-fi concepts laden with breathtaking reveals. A dizzying modern sci-fi horror classic that will burrow itself deep into your mind.
Splice.
From the director of the sci-fi horror classic Cube, Splice is a Cronenbergian head trip that feels like the crossbreed between Species and The Fly, but somehow sexier? Adrian Brody and Sarah Polley lead this excellent creature feature about two genetic engineers who decide to splice human and animal DNA to create an abomination that will haunt your uncanny valley nightmares. The result of their experiment is a seductive, smart, and deadly predator who is somehow a femme fatale on top of being a nightmare creature with a barbed tail. This movie is undeniably weird, oddly erotic, and downright unforgettable, hitting the notes of body horror and sci-fi mayhem with brutal accuracy. For those looking for something undeniably odd, check out Splice for a night at the movies chock full of uncomfortable body horror and sci-fi scares.
GANTZ 0.
Released by Toho, the company behind the 50-plus year Godzilla series in Japan, GANTZ 0 is a bizarre but awesome mix of Pacific Rim, Edge of Tomorrow, and somehow a little of Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. This is a fully CG action, horror, sci-fi spectacle that follows an elite unit of soldiers made up of formerly dead Japanese citizens, who have been resurrected by a mysterious computer named GANTZ and then sent into a war zone where they are tasked with fighting horrific kaiju abominations with high-tech weaponry. Sounds weird, sure, as most things based off of an anime tend to be, but once you swallow the setup, you'll be strapped in for a kaiju fighting action horror spectacle with incredible photorealistic animation and some truly epic and weird creature designs. As much as I would love a sequel to this, GANTZ is a self-contained story that will get your heart pumping and will fill your eyes with crazy levels of CGI anime-style spectacle. An awesome, mostly undiscovered gem that deserves a cult classic status in both adult animation and the sci-fi horror genres. Check this one out now.
Life.
Cat? Cat, you're fighting me, Cat. Come on.
Cat.
Look at me.
Cat.
Just pull on the lever.
David, stop. She's not letting Calvin back in here.
To me, Life is the king of the alien knockoff subgenre. Since its release in the late 70s, movies have tried and failed to present an alien sci-fi horror story on the same level as Ridley Scott's masterpiece. But I would argue that 2017's Life is the best example of creature space horror to grace our movie screens in decades. I absolutely love the growth cycle and morphology of the central alien menace Calvin from this movie. He makes your skin crawl with the way that he moves and learns and grows more deadly. The great creature feature at the center of this story is supported by an absolutely stacked all-star cast of actors, which feels sadly rare for this genre as of late. The space effects and cinematography are also immaculate here, and this movie absolutely nails the real-life aesthetic of the International Space Station and its eventual epic destruction. A movie that sunk like a stone on its release, Life has grown to become appreciated as a new modern sci-fi B-movie classic, and is absolutely worth the trip to space.
Europa Report.
One of the best mockumentaries ever, Europa Report is a scientifically accurate, well-researched, and ultimately nightmarish sci-fi experience that chronicles the journey of 6 astronauts as they travel to one of the moons of Jupiter to investigate a potentially extraterrestrial energy reading. While this film's ultimate conclusions to its mysteries are unforgettably shocking, the journey to Europa itself is fraught with catastrophic difficulties that really highlight the existential horror of space travel long before they ever reach their destination. A tense, at times bleak, and ultimately breathtaking ride to the other side of the solar system to find answers to our biggest questions, Europa Report is a truly memorable, wholly original, sci-fi hidden gem masterpiece.
Time Crimes.
Playing like a mixture of John Carpenter's Halloween and Netflix's Dark, Time Crimes is a temporal, mind-bending slasher that uses a simple setting to tell a deeply complex narrative. This movie clearly inspired other time travel properties like the movie The Triangle, which honestly is a direct ripoff of this film, but it's not my job to get litigious here. Time Crimes is a jaw-dropping sci-fi time travel yarn that follows a man who lives in the Spanish countryside on an idyllic afternoon that becomes a nightmare once he accidentally stumbles into a time loop that sends him on a surreal and terrifying journey. This is probably my favorite time travel movie ever, and its leaning into the horror genre just really sweetens the deal on this sci-fi classic. A gorgeously shot film with an incredibly tight script that will appeal to fans of horror, sci-fi, and even Hitchcockian thrillers. Time Crimes is a genre mashup that plays with time and the viewer's brain in all new and interesting ways. Check this one out now.
EXISTENZ.
EXISTENZ. It's new, it's from Antenna Research, and it's here.
Quite possibly one of the most underrated sci-fi horror films ever made. David Cronenberg's EXISTENZ is a movie that more people should be enamored with. While it isn't often mentioned in the top 3 for the Canadian Cronenberg legend's career, I'd argue that EXISTENZ is one of his best films and one of the greatest sci-fi movies of the 90s. Kinda like The Matrix with a body horror and a VR twist, EXISTENZ is the downright definition of a 90s movie mindfuck. Jude Law, Willem Dafoe, and Jennifer Jason Leigh turn in appropriately unhinged performances here, as a bizarre story of a game developer on the run from a team of assassins devolves into a reality-bending nightmare full of all of the hallmarks of Cronenberg's best work. I just don't feel like people were ready for this movie in '99, as EXISTENZ quickly faded from existence as The Matrix seemingly took over the world. There's no better time to check out one of the best techno-thriller sci-fi horror movies ever made, as EXISTENZ should be considered an undisputed classic of the genre instead of the 5th or 7th best David Cronenberg movie. A total trip and a body horror early internet classic that will turn your mind into goop. Boot up EXISTENZ now.
Altered States.
Now that he's sadly gone, it's time to make sure you've seen every William Hurt performance. And I don't just mean the Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. I mean the good ones, like the 1980s body horror sci-fi masterpiece, Altered States. This movie deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of body horror classics next to The Fly and The Substance, etc. But for some reason, it still feels like this movie is criminally underseen and underloved. The Joe Rogan Duncan Trussell troupe ought to love this movie, as it follows a scientific researcher in the 60s who uses massive quantities of DMT and a sensory deprivation tank to try and reverse the effects of schizophrenia, only to find out that his experiments are beginning to have mind and body-altering effects that are starting to literally regress his human evolution. This is a cautionary sci-fi tale wrapped in a body horror parable that asks some pretty huge questions about what makes us human. A prolific and probing sci-fi film that was clearly ahead of its time, the influence of Altered States can be seen in the work of sci-fi filmmakers like Benson and Moorhead still to this day. a trippy sci-fi horror classic worthy of another stage in de-evolution.
Under the Skin.
Meditative, hypnotic, and absolutely unforgettable, Under the Skin is potentially one of the best science fiction films of the modern age. And yet, it's often looked over when discussing the best that this genre has to offer. Easily one of the best films ever put out by A24, and surely one of the best movies to ever star Scarlett Johansson. Under the Skin is a deeply unconventional film that is mostly dialogue-free, acting as a dread-soaked mood piece that is downright nightmarish. The basic plot of the film follows Johansson as she terrorizes the countryside of Glasgow, picking up men and devouring them in mysterious and horrifying ways. Soon we begin to realize that not only is Scarlett's nameless character a femme fatale, but she isn't human either. Her methodical hunting and slaughter of men is as allegorical as it is chill-inducing, and Under the Skin acts as a cold and detached record of her killing spree that feels so real that it almost plays like a documentary. Raw, graphic, and full of sci-fi horror visuals that will sear themselves into your mind, Under the Skin is an undeniable classic of the genre and one of the most piercing and unsettling films on this list. To check out a modern sci-fi horror masterpiece, look no further than Under the Skin.
Sputnik.
Sputnik is a Russian-language film that contains nearly every aspect of the sci-fi horror subgenre that I love. It's a slimy creature feature, an allegorical political thriller, a body horror yarn, and an action sci-fi blockbuster all wrapped up into one incredible film. Following a troubled mission in space, a Russian astronaut returns to his home base exhibiting some oddly troubling behavior and a major change to his biology that I won't dare spoil here. This movie felt like a close cousin to the Alien franchise, as well as a meditation on governmental and military bureaucracy without coming off as overly heavy-handed. Impressively mounted and directed with some truly excellent and skin-crawling creature design, Sputnik is a tightly calibrated sci-fi horror classic that just keeps getting better as it goes along. A well-oiled balance between scares, action, and jaw-dropping body horror, Sputnik is the perfect selection for those of us hungry for the best that this genre has to offer, and, in my mind, is a new modern classic in the sci-fi horror world that demands to be seen. Check out Sputnik now. And just like that, folks, that's the list of 25 horror sci-fi hidden gems. If you want more content like this, make sure to leave me a nice comment, leave me some love, because I do have 75 more of these ready to go. Until then, enjoy your Halloween season, get spooky with it, and let me know what your favorite horror sci-fi movies are in the comments below. I'm sure there's plenty that I haven't seen, I'm sure there's plenty that you're mad I didn't include, so, type with your little fingies and tell me what you want to see on the next list. Or just tell me this was terrible. Either way, it's good for engagement. Until next time, I am DS Lyons of the Movie Blues, signing out. Bye.
Because I love you, and I love you, and I love you, and I've seen all your movies, and I love your movies, and I think you're the best.